Hello and welcome to the wonderful Feel It Friday of the live Inspirational Community Collaboration Show. My name is Mark Abadi. It's such a pleasure to be able to hold space for people to come on and share their gifts and their insight and their wisdom. So please like, share, do all that fun stuff underneath. We have phenomenal guests today. Both of these people actually I met at Bhakti Fest. I had the pleasure of producing that festival, which is a conscious unfolding of space holding for people to come and experience the divinity and the grace of the divine. So my first guest is Jeffrey Armstrong, who is by all intents and purposes a specialist in the Vedic field of understanding the origins of language. The Sanskrit is the origin of all European languages, so understanding all those aspects. He's been a yoga teacher and a Vedic Dharmic studies practitioner for 50 years, and now full-time coaches and helps people through the understanding of this integrated form of wellness from the origins of the original teachings. There's so much more I'll read out in a minute. And then afterwards, we have got Zat Baraka, who is a men's coach and a space holder for the sacred elements of men's circles to enable more balanced integration of masculine and femininity within the being. And that's later on. Jeffrey, I'm going to bring Jeffrey in at this point. So let me do another seamless transition. Jeffrey Armstrong, welcome to the show.
Namaste, Mark. It's great to see you.
So nice to see you. And, of course, as normal, butchered your intro, but I do want to read out, some of the things. You're the founder of the VASA, the Vedic Academy of Scientific Arts. You're also the chairman of the VFA, which is the Vedic Friends Association, and a scholar of the British Board of Dharmic Scholars. Right now, obviously, in the website below, you can see, in the links below, everyone can see your links to your page so they can find out more about you. Where are you at the moment and how are you?
We're in Vancouver, Canada, and we're delightful, doing very, very well. Like the animals of nature, when yogis have to spend a lot of time in their abode and meditating, it doesn't make us unhappy, it makes us deeply happy.
Right.
Because we have so much quiet time. We live near the airport, and the airplanes that used to go overhead are not. The garbage trucks that used to back up and make noise all the time are not. So this is the quietest. We're in a penthouse apartment on the 18th floor, and it's the quietest it's been for a century.
Well, I mean, there are benefits to this. A lot of the people in the spiritual community are really somehow enjoying this moment. Are you also, or are you just always enjoying things?
Well, a little bit of both, I would say. After all, to be a teacher of the yogic skills is to practice them. And the practice of those skills is to always stay in a joyful state of being and to correct your situation when you're not, as we all drift from one side to the other due to our surroundings. So this is an opportunity to be of service to many people, because many of my students and clients as an astrologer have called me in a state of distress of one kind or the other, and I've been of service to them over the last couple of months. So both things.
So what are some of the things that you're noticing coming up in this time with your clients?
Well, of course, the main confrontation, it depends on who you are.
Right.
My first joke when the whole COVID thing started was that the run on the grocery stores was for junk food and toilet paper.
Right.
So the junk food's the problem and the toilet paper is getting rid of the evidence.
Yeah.
So on one level, people who don't have a healthy lifestyle are probably becoming aware of the fact that they don't have one.
Right.
And on the other level, those who do have a healthy lifestyle are no doubt happy because of that lifestyle.
So is this something that you've you study Vedic astrology as well? Is this something that astrology has explanations for? Are there certain things going on in the astrological bodies that govern us that are like, oh yeah, I can see that this planet's in conjunct with this planet?
Well, your question is, does the cosmos impinge upon our planet?
Yes.
And the answer is pretty obvious, that it does. So it's a matter of your perspective. If for some reason you think we only live for one life, then the idea of cause and effect over time would not make much sense to you. But if you believe that we're immortal beings, visiting a temporary place within matter, then you would think that we're here in what I call university, not just a universe. We're learning from life to life, and we're working on projects from life to life that are of interest to us. So you could say that yoga views us as interesting immortal beings on a long journey, and that at each moment the cosmos is giving us feedback, both as a society and as an individual, on the things that we've been doing previously. In other words, it takes time for our cause and effect to catch up to us.
Right.
That's astrology.
Right.
You can't know everything with astrology, but we can know some pretty interesting things, that's for sure.
And one of the other things that we talked about were the origins of words, the etymology of things. And your specialty is in having studying the Vedic texts. Can you talk to us about how you got into that and why it's so why it pulled you in?
Well, first and foremost, I was actually a poet from a quite young age, which shows you that I was deeply involved in looking at words and trying to learn how to use them correctly so that they conveyed meaning. You could say I was a truth seeker from a quite young age. So that interest in words led me to look for a civilization with the most interesting library. If you just look for that, then the culture of India has the largest library in the world. That is to say, before Gutenberg and the printing press, because you don't count that.
Right.
Because a myriad of meaningless and not so useful books have come out since the printing press. But in ancient times, every culture was endowed with a particular gift of certain wisdom. And what makes India different from other cultures, from all other cultures, is the magnitude of their library of wisdom and the amazing and important things that that library contains. So I was led to that library by just being a hungry student,
Right.
and learned of its language, Sanskrit, because in order to study a culture, you must learn its language some. So just as it used to be that Latin was taught in our schools, because it's one of the classical languages behind English, or the European languages, some of them. So similarly, the Greek language is sitting behind Latin. But you see, for the last few hundred years, when England was colonizing India, it was not easy for them to say that this is the most ancient, intelligent culture on the planet.
Right.
Kind of embarrassing when you're stealing everything and then complimenting someone.
Right.
So you could say they weren't complimentary and they didn't help this to come forward. So that's part of what I'm doing now, is showing that behind Greek, Latin, European languages, Aramaic, Phoenician, Hebrew, and English is Sanskrit.
Why is it important to understand? Like, it's great to have the history and to get recognition. Okay, so this came from this, but why do we care now? Doesn't everyone know what anyone's saying to them?
Well, there's two reasons. The first is, tell me, how would a computer programmer do without a language?
Wouldn't be able to program.
That's it. So think of us in our body as programmers who are trying to extract the potential from our being. We know that it's there. We've seen others extract it. We've seen others excel in various ways. So one challenge to all of us is looking at ourselves and finding the ways to extract the potential, which others have obviously done, and to bring that out so that our life is more excellent, more exciting, more joyful, more interesting. The second part is not all languages are the same. I'll give you an example. The higher mathematics of modern science actually came from India. It's well established. How do I know that? Well, I'll tell you a secret. Try to do Roman numerals and program your computer. X, X, V, I would not program a computer. It was binary mathematics, ones and zeros, a mathematics discovered in India that was what made it possible to program your computer. Right. The Greeks, on the other hand, hated zero, hated it, feared it, and hated it. So they didn't like mathematics either of any higher level, because they too had amateurish mathematics. So in fact, science did not come from either of those cultures. It came from the place where mathematics came from, which is India and the Sanskrit language. So did astronomy and many other sciences, but they've all been colonized. So we have been told that we invented. This would be like the Koh-i-Noor gem in the British Museum and saying, we invented this. No, it was stolen from the eyes of a deity in India. Right. So what we've taken from everyone else is not originated in us, but it was originated in a brilliant culture. So that's one aspect of the Vedic culture. Now the second is, there was a tremendous amount of information about introspection and about who we really are that was given to that civilization. It's what we now call yoga, which means linking yourself to some higher energetic state of understanding and downloading that, just like this call. If it wasn't satellite downloaded, it wouldn't be useful because no one would receive it.
Right.
So think of that as a kind of channeling. You're being a channel right now.
So,
and that channeling is what yoga originally is.
So yoga's the study to, I mean, the word yoga means union, right? I mean, that's my Western understanding of it. Is that correct?
Not quite. It actually means connection.
Connection, right.
And union is the result of connection to some degree. But was it a marriage, a friendship, a high five? What kind of union? So what it means is access to a reality that doesn't appear obvious.
So
that's yoga.
Yes. So you mentioned that yoga was designed to help us know who we really are. Who are we really?
Well, we only have two choices, really. But once you've decided one of these two, it'll decide everything else. You either have only one life, and that's that.
Right.
Or you're an immortal being and you can't die. If you wanted to control people, which of those two would you tell them?
Oh yeah, one off option. Watch out.
One off. I call it use once, throw away. That's how we're treating our planet, isn't it?
Yes, disposable.
So use once, throw away came from various philosophical systems of thought that appeared to want to scare their followers into submission, dominate them, give them a few interesting ideas, but didn't want them to think too much or didn't believe they could think too much. But if you hold the view that we're immortal beings visiting a temporary planet, that's a big worldview. This is the Sanskrit word Mahatma. It means big-minded. And the smaller mindedness of only one lifetime is called Duratma. Like duress. When you want to put someone under duress, you scare them. So the frightened, small-minded viewpoint of existence is there's only one life, the clock is ticking, and then I'll be gone. The brave, large-minded, big view is that I'm an immortal being, and so are all these other entities around me, and that all of us are visiting here, and we can't die. We're just here gathering experience. Which view sounds more fun to you?
Yeah, definitely the immortal being gathering the experience.
So if you don't make it too dogmatic, if you just leave it that way, that's what this means. It means I see that you are, like I see myself, an immortal being. And I respect you because of that, even if I don't know who you are.
How does this connect to the Buddhist philosophy of reincarnation?
Well, you have to look at every great teacher in the context of their historical moment. So at the time Buddha appeared in India, he was facing a time in India's history where the teachers had memorized the knowledge, but morally they were not all acting as they should. And he was a reformer. He wanted to fix that. He wanted to get people back to fundamental values. So that's why the Buddha Dharma is, number one, about fundamental values, and number two, nirvana, or nirvan, simply means nothing belongs to me. In Sanskrit, van means one who owns or possesses, and nir means nothing. So nirvana is not a positive affirmation of a state of existence, but it's an important thing to say to anyone within matter, that none of this is yours, even if you think so. So Buddha did an important thing. He upped the moral game, and he brought people to a higher understanding of what they weren't, getting them ready to understand again who they are.
You see, just that simple reframe of the word nirvana. I mean, nirvana obviously is a very popular word. People know it, not just because of the rock group, but you know, yes, everyone wants nirvana. They think it's like bliss and perfect being. But from the Sanskrit there, the origins of it is, I possess nothing. Right? So I have nirvana means I have nothing.
That's right. It means I don't own anything. Doesn't mean I don't have it.
Right.
But I don't own anything that I apparently have. It's just passing through, and so am I. So there's no permanent affiliation between me and all these particles of matter. Just like our body, it's just the lunch we had for the last couple of years. It's particles, I call it the lunch body because it's particles of food orbiting consciousness.
But
this is what yoga teaches.
Yeah, and people talk about their wanting to achieve this. Oh, I want to get to nirvana. I want to get to bliss. I want to get to heaven. Do you think all aspects of this search for this ultimate heavenist experience are all equally futile?
Well, you've got to watch saying, I want to go to nothing. because nothing is not a place you can go to. So there's an inherent paradox in saying you want to go there, and who will ever affirm that you went there? You can't, because you don't exist. No one else can, because they're an illusion.
Right.
So no one could ever prove that they went to nowhere, because nowhere isn't provable.
Yeah, because there's no one else there to see it,
to approve it or affirm it.
Right.
So, but this is a stage of understanding. None of this is mine. That's brilliant. That's a brilliant contribution historically, which he gave us at a moment when it was very necessary. But let's say the next thing, which is, I am a luminous being. The reason I like light so much, and that light is the source of life, is this where we come from. If you want to know who we are, we're little particles of light that can't be extinguished. That's who I am. I'm the part you can't destroy. So that's called Brahman. Now, here's the rule with language. Because we don't have that word in English, nobody in English can say what I just said. Because they don't have a word for the place where everything is luminous and there's no matter. But the Veda and the Sanskrit has those words so that we can discuss concepts that are everyday object-oriented languages. Here's my glass, pass the water. Right. That's indisputable. But tell me what love means. This is a glass. That wasn't, we didn't argue over that. As soon as I say, what does love mean? You go, and now it's a big subjective subject.
So because we don't... Yeah.
Brahman is the name for the reality where what we call light is coming from in Sanskrit.
So because we don't have that word in English, are you saying then that using the English language to discuss higher level concepts is lame?
Let's just say it's a sloppy programming language. It's even sloppier than Greek or Latin. And they're improved upon. Their language is a little more rigorous, a little more precise. Let's think of it as precision. The reason Latin is used as a scientific language in English is because it's more exact and more precise. So why is science only about objects? Why isn't it also about ultimate truth? Why aren't there words for ultimate realities that are not made of matter?
Yeah. I suppose because language by itself has definition to it. It has edges. And in the ultimate non-defined space, there's no edge. And so nothing to be defined by.
Well, be careful that you don't jump to conclusions at this stage of our conversation. I didn't say that. You did.
Aha.
I didn't say there's no definitions there. I said there's no matter.
No
there.
matter, yeah.
If definitions come from matter, that's a different thing.
Right.
But what if our identity is not matter? Well, then our identity came from Brahman and not from here within matter. So matter is called prakriti. Pra-kri-iti. Pra, in English, gives us the word produce. Kri is the root of karma, which means doing over and over by cause and effect. And iti means again and again and again. So matter in Sanskrit is prakriti, the place where things are born and die and born and die and born and die in a process based on serial cause and effect that happens over and over and over and over again.
So it's like the toroidal creating matter out of the plasma that is the energy.
And the matter appears to us when it's closer to being matter, so we can pick it up.
Okay.
Have a tangible relationship with it. But because we don't pick something up doesn't mean it's not true. What makes us conscious? Is the consciousness arising from matter, but matter is inert? But let me ask you this. When you see beauty in life, doesn't it make a promise to you?
A promise? Does beauty make
Yes.
a promise?
Beauty promises satisfaction. Beauty
promises.
says, wouldn't you like to be like me? Wouldn't you like to have this? as one of the great poets said in English, truth is beauty and beauty is truth. Mm. So there's something in beauty that is driving the whole show. And everyone's running after that beauty to have it. So think about that.
Right.
If you only have one life, then how many years do you have to run after the beauty? Just a few. Does everyone get the beauty? Most don't. Most get a few tastes and then they don't get it. And now, so is it a sort of a tease show to show you beauty and then dump you after half an hour of hungering for beauty and say, sorry, you can't have it? If that's what life's about, then I'm not interested personally. I think it's disgusting. Anyone who created beauty couldn't possibly have such a disgusting conclusion. So the real question is, where does beauty come from? How can I get some? How can I get an unlimited amount? Mm. But everything here is limited. Right. So maybe I won't be able to get it here. So yoga points us to another direction and says, sorry, you're not from here.
So it seems like there are these two dimensions. There's the matter dimension, and then there's the, for want of a better term, energy dimension.
Think of it this way. Think of us as in the tangibility of matter. And we see it and study it. Earth, mm-hmm. water, fire, air, space, periodic table of elements. You can analyze it all day long. But the matter is unconscious. It shows no sign of consciousness. This glass has not shown any signs of consciousness since I've known it. So, I am fundamentally different. Even though my body is evolving as I live year after year after year, I'm still the same consciousness inside. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Dehi nosmin yata dehe komaram yovanam jara tata dehantaras praptir diras tatra namoyate. It says, as the embodied Atma, divine being, goes from childhood to youth to old age. Similarly, when their body is no longer useful, they leave and go somewhere else. A person who knows yoga does not get confused by these comings and goings. Mm. In other words, a yogi is not the least bit afraid of their body falling away and them moving on.
Because they have identity in the non-matter area?
No, it's not their identity. It's not who they are. It's where they are. It's where they're visiting. Just like if you go to Arizona, you're not an Arizonian. You're visiting Arizona. You don't automatically become an Arizonian just because.
So are we visiting the matter, or are we visiting the energy?
We're visiting matter right now, which is why we can't stay in any one place. It's kind of embarrassing, isn't it?
Right.
Yeah, and we have to keep eating and then going to the toilet, eating and going to the toilet. That's kind of awkward. Would you choose to do that if you could change it? No, thank you very much. I would eat and the waste would disappear magically and right. I wouldn't be bothered. So if you say, I'm completely happy here, I have everything I want, you must be a billionaire who are temporarily deluded by your money. It's like Howard Hughes. He lived in a single room in the top floor of an apartment building with hair down to his waist and long fingernails, and he had billions of dollars in his bank. Didn't help him any. So yoga says consciousness is what will help you, the correct state of consciousness. And therefore, to reprogram your being, you need language, because language is how you reprogram. Therefore, you need Sanskrit, because it's the language that talks about things that are not material. It talks about realities that are beyond matter.
So in the reality that's beyond matter, are there limits in that reality?
Within matter.
Outside of the matter. What's the other reality?
There are no limits as we know them, because it's a different kind of energy. So if you think right now, our experience of light here is, if I have a certain amount of light, it's dependent upon my supply of electricity. So it's very limited. By comparison, does the sun show any signs of limitation on its energy?
No.
No. So if there's a magnitude of difference between my electricity and the sun's, then where does the sun come from? So would there not be even more of that luminous energy where the sun comes from? So if you had to go to a place, would you rather go to a completely dark place that never sees light again, or a completely light place where there's always an abundance of light?
Yeah, option-wise, you choose light, yeah.
And the only people that want the dark are mushrooms. They, I mean, obviously, if you've given up all hope, you'd want the dark.
So in this other place beyond matter, is there no duality anymore?
Yeah, that's the concept. One of the concepts within matter is that everything here is in a kind of push-pull contest. It's like our body. Our body is designed so that different parts of our body are pushing and pulling against our body.
Yes.
So you might say our body is an argument, and we're standing in the center of the argument.
Right.
If the argument goes bad, we get what's called a disease.
Yeah.
It didn't go well, and the balance got lost. So that's not us. We're the one walking the tightrope. We're the one walking the wire in the midst of the body that is full of opposites. But we could think this is me because it's all I know.
Mm-hmm.
So that's considered the starting point for us as human beings, just up from animals. And that's why there's no animals watching this on television, right? Or at least understanding it if there was.
Yes, exactly, yeah.
So the human ability is to ask these questions about who am I, where do I come from, why was I born, why do I get old, and ultimately, why do I appear to die, even though I do not want any of those things.
And do you think there's a danger in this that we can start to overthink and get lost within the Maya? What's your understanding and interpretation of the Maya and its ability to sort of suck us in and like, come, you can find the answers down here, and it just takes you down the rabbit hole, but you're not actually going anywhere, you're not leaving.
That's an excellent question. So let's look at it this way. Let's say that you're at a movie and the movie's being broadcast onto a stone wall. That's a good reflecting surface for the movie. And the movie's so attractive, you keep running toward the wall and slamming into it and bloodying your nose because you want to be in the movie.
Right.
Raise your hand if you've ever watched a movie and thought, I'd like to be in that movie. Yeah. I'd like to be with that guy or that girl or that thing or that scene. Or it's so beautiful. That's why we watch movies. We pay money to be fooled. Okay, so now let's think that about the 10th time you do that, you kind of stay on the floor. You don't walk back. And you see that what's on the screen and the screen are two different things. Got it?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So the image is not the screen.
Yeah.
And that's why you keep getting a bloody nose. So you turn around. That's called nirvana. Nirvana is when you turn around and turn your back to matter and say, you can't help me. And you look up at the light. And the light's shining down from some bright, luminous spot up there. And the light looks different in every stage of its downward journey.
Mm-hmm.
But it's obviously where the beauty on the wall is coming from, so you start following it back. Okay? Now you're an ascended master. Now you're on your way, following the light back to its source. You're now a yogi. And at a certain point, you get to the lens of the projector, and you put your eye right up against it. But it's so beautiful, so bright, and so light that it blinds you, and for a moment you forget why you were doing what you were doing, because it's overwhelmingly bright. So you conclude it's all one. It's all just light. At each stage, these are reasonable conclusions, but the question hasn't been answered yet, which was originally, where does the beauty on the screen come from? So the next stage is you go inside the lens of the projector, and you find yourself in the projection room where they're projecting the movie onto the screen. And these are called the devas, the divine beings who are making the material world operate.
So
the ultimate deva is Brahma and Saraswati, the creator. So you could say that beyond the camera, the projector, is the place where they made the movie that you're watching, that you want to be in. Now the actors and actresses are all there. Now the images that are being projected through matter are all there. At that stage, you now encounter a different kind of individuality, a different kind of reality. And this demonstrates first nirvana, when you realize you're not the screen and you don't keep trying to have it. Your desires slow down, right? Then you look up toward the light, then you go up and ascend at different levels. On the way, you're an ascended master, so to speak. And then you get to the light, put your eye right up against it, and all you see is white light. If you stop there, you'll say, everything I thought was something else is just white light.
Right.
Or you go inside and find out how the movie's being made.
So
these are all stages of yoga.
So beyond the white light, where you're at a state where you're going, everything is one. Beyond the white light, are you saying there's some stuff there? There's creatures, there's
not
beings.
Stuff, but what I'm saying is that the forms that we're seeing within matter exist first within the light. And I'm not saying it, the Vedas say it.
Right.
The Vedas say that that's what's actually true, but that at each stage of realization, when you're absorbed in the movie, you'll think there's only the movie.
Right.
When you're at nirvana, when you find out the movie's an illusion, you go, that movie's a complete illusion. Turn your back on it. Then when you go to the light and blend with it, you'll think this is ultimate. This is the ultimate experience I ever had.
Right.
But the Vedas keep going, and they say, yes, keep going, keep going.
Right.
Oneness is just a stage. Emptiness is just a stage. Because neither emptiness or oneness explain beauty. Just think about it. Beauty needs to be explained, not dismissed. Philosophically, this is hugely important.
Yeah.
If you dismiss beauty, I have a saying about this for scientists, and that is, a scientist is someone who can tell you everything about the love letter, but has never read it.
Right.
In other words, they're not an artist, a poet. They're not a painter, a dancer, a musician. Where does the musician grab beauty from and bring it down to their instrument? Where does it live so they can grab it and bring it down? How did Beethoven write that Fifth Symphony, that remarkable piece, the Moonlight Sonata, that blows your mind every time you hear it? So is it a complete illusion? Then what do you have to look forward to if everything is a complete illusion? Why would you even search for emptiness beyond illusion?
For the freedom of the being free from the illusion would be one answer.
This is the first step. That is, you no longer think the beauty exists inside the matter. That's nirvana.
Turning your back on the projector screen and seeing where the light's
Turn
coming
your back
from.
on the movie and you go, that can't satisfy.
Right.
Then you follow the light back to its source. That's Brahman. Brahman is, in Sanskrit, the source of the light. And then you say, Aham Brahmasmi, I am the light.
So, I mean, this is, it's fascinating that there's like a descriptive path explaining things. So, where does the beauty come from then? And is beauty not in the eye of the beholder?
Yeah, no, it's not in the eyes of the beholder. It's reflected into the eyes of the beholder. They're not making it up. They're not that powerful. If they were, they wouldn't have this problem. They can't invent this whole thing because they're not that brilliant. They're brilliant enough to go there, but they're not brilliant enough to invent the whole thing. Otherwise, we'd see them doing it all the time. So really, they're captured by the beauty, whether they see it within themselves or outside. And they want it, and they go and grab it as if it was an object. Okay? And then they get frustrated and say, no, that didn't give me what I want. I quit. It's all nothing. That's just sour grapes. The beauty still exists. You just didn't have the right relationship to the beauty. So you said, sour grapes, it's all an illusion. No, it's not an illusion. It's a reflection.
Right. It's not an illusion, it's a reflection.
Follow the reflection back. You have to follow the light, because light is the source of all of this. No light, and there's nothing to talk about. Turn the lights off right now, turn all the light off right now, and you and I are done. Interview over. It's only the light that makes this possible. So within it, whatever is interesting, whatever is leading us somewhere, is either leading us to an obvious dead end, which we should be able to predict after a while,
right,
within matter, or it's not deluding us, it's pointing us and answering the question. Beauty doesn't come from somewhere, it exists somewhere forever.
Okay, so we've got the existence of beauty beyond the everything.
Beyond the realm of matter.
Right, and at some point there's just the light and everything's light.
Only from your perception.
Right.
You look at it and that's all you see.
Okay, so it's
you
a
don't see
perception.
the light, the beauty within the light.
Right.
Any more than you would see the film if you put your eye up against the projector.
And in the place where the beauty is originating, is
then
there...
all the actors and actresses are there.
So Jeffrey is there?
No, Jeffrey's not there, but beings are there. Jeffrey is the persona of whoever I really am here within matter this lifetime. Jeffrey's just a mannequin.
Right. So the you that's powering the mannequin is there.
Is there.
And
now sees everyone else and myself in a very unique way. So this is why yoga takes many lifetimes. Because these are deep subjects. It takes a while to get them. And it's why you need Sanskrit words. So you can reprogram your understanding from just dealing with objects to dealing with realities and their existence. Now, one more secret to this.
Yeah.
The way light comes into this world and manifests is through sound vibration.
Right. I totally agree with that.
Even the Hebrew texts have this. In the beginning was the Word.
Word was God.
Ekubahunam yo vididati kaman. In the beginning was a vibration of truth that was luminous and bright and carried all of this reality within matter and projected it onto the screen of matter. And there we are, trying to figure it out. Here we are, down inside of it, trying to figure it out. And at every stage, each thinker is somewhere either terribly lost or improving their perspective and seeing more from a different angle.
Yeah. I mean, can we think our way out of thinking here?
Well, that's what the saying in the yoga teachings is. That's what a guru is for. You could theoretically, but the likelihood of it really happening is pretty small. So, I mean, you could get a revelation at any moment that makes you smarter than you are. And that's all of us, not just you. So you could get that blinding revelation. But more likely is that thinking helps you to progress until it becomes direct experience.
Right, right.
And direct experience is a very different thing, as anyone who has experience knows. Theoretical knowledge and realized knowledge.
Right.
So that's called jnana, J-N-A-N-A, where the word knowing comes from in English. And gnosis, like a diagnosis, that's from the Sanskrit jnana, to know. So knowing eventually becomes vijnana, and that is realized knowing, not theoretical, but directly realized. So this is why yogis don't just think, they clear the body and make sure they balance its energies. Because if they're too out of balance, you can't hold the right focus.
Right.
Then instead of thinking these ideas, they use mantras to hold them as a meditation. And then in that meditation, they stay for long periods of time, being in direct contact with particular ideas. But you can see most human beings would not feel comfortable being that isolated and taking such command over their vehicle.
Yeah.
So most human beings are still limited and find Ashtanga yoga practice too difficult. There are other methods of yoga, and this is why yogis are of different stripes and flavors. So you could say there are different methods of making this journey back.
So the journey back is taking us from thought, knowledge, into realization, or thought, knowledge.
Taking us from bondage to matter.
Right.
To able to see what's being reflected in matter without getting into bondage. So therefore, we're actually able to go where everything is coming from when the time is right. And that's called in Sanskrit moksha.
Moksha.
Now you'll notice that the word mo entered our language as emotion, as motor, as motivate. So if what you saw when you got to that point created bigger emotions than anything within matter ever had, would it be a difficult choice to tell where to go?
No.
No. You'd go, okay, I'm going there. That's how you direct yourself here. You see the trailer to the movie and you decide to see the movie. So here, if you finally get to that point, there's no argument about where you'd like to stay, but from the outside, it looks like you've given up. So to the people still attached to matter as the definition of self, so it's very simple. If you say, aham kara, I am this vehicle, and that's where the word car in English comes. I am the car. So imagine if you were with someone who was in their automobile and they were saying, I am a Chevy. Chevy is what I am. You'd look at them and say, do you really believe that? And they'd go, yeah, I'm the car, man. I am all about this car. So what if this is just your Chevy or your Volkswagen or your Cadillac, whatever it is just your vehicle.
Right.
So if you think this is you, you are just as deluded as the person who gets in their car and thinks they're their car.
They're the car, yeah. Okay, so you've got a person and they're like, okay, this all sounds great, Jeffrey. I love the idea of this. I want to realize.
Want to what?
Realize. I want to realize the light.
You realize.
I want to realize the beauty. What do I do?
Well, thanks. That's the next secret, of course. You have to have someone who gives you practices. If you want to become a sports professional of some kind, without a coach showing you the just right way to do a particular thing, you're very unlikely to figure it out yourself in time. But when somebody shows you the secret to something, you go, amazing. Look at that. There's a just right way to hold the bat, or a just right way to throw the ball. And as soon as you know that, all the obstacles are removed. That's guru. But guru is acting as our coach for self-identity. And that's why it's not a club you join, it's not a sect, it's not a religion, it's not a worship per se, and it's not faith. It's an activity. And you have a coach, the guru, and the coach tells you practices, and if you don't practice them, imagine you have a sports coach that was an Olympic star. Right. I had an Olympic fencing master. So he had won gold medals as a fencer. So he was teaching us fencing. So would you respect him or disrespect him?
Respect. He's Olympic.
So how would you show your respect?
Doing what he told you.
Exactly.
Right.
And so you wouldn't have given up your free will. You would have surrendered it to someone you think is worthy of it. That's a guru. If you try to give your free will up, they'll hand it back to you and say, that's not the part that I take. All I take is your respect, and I teach you how to perfect you. Anything else is not what I do. So anyone else who says they're a guru but deviates from that is not a guru. All gurus have the same code of conduct. I don't take from you. I'm here to give you these techniques so that you may perfect yourself. But if you don't practice them, my giving them to you will not solve the dilemma.
Right. So
once again, the guru will give you language and mantras and practices that will facilitate achieving these goals.
So the guru himself or their self,
his or her.
Their point is to provide a reflection for you to realize yourself.
No, that's not the whole of it, but that's part of it. It's true they're supposed to show this by their personal example of action, but it's also because they're the conveyor of the techniques. So they should be living what they're teaching, no doubt.
Okay.
So in that sense, they show it to you. The word is acharya. You hear car in there again? It means someone who moves the way they teach.
Acharya.
Acharya, someone who actually embodies what they're saying. So it's not theoretical. They also do it every day. Still, they don't say, I perfected that. They do it every day still. So if you lived with them, you'd watch them get up and do it every day at certain times to make sure they stay in that state of being.
So are we, what happens to the personality? Like what happens to Markabadi when the me realizes itself in the light and beyond?
Well, Markabadi has to die sometime.
Yeah, but let's assume
that doesn't mean you do.
Okay,
so what happens is you see yourself as the Atma, as this immortal being, and you see your vehicle, your persona. The word automobile means one's own way of moving around.
Okay.
Auto, one's own self, mobile. So at that point, you see Markabadi as your automobile.
Right.
And you see the consciousness that has identified with Markabadi as the Atma, as the immortal being.
Okay.
You no longer confuse the two, just like you don't get in a car and confuse yourself with the car. Or the driver with the car, or the chauffeur with the car.
So then what about the practical notions of the personality and its, chopping wood before enlightenment, chopping wood after?
Well, English doesn't have useful words for this because English has never tried to say these things. So this is why it's more difficult to talk about. But if you talk about it with Sanskrit, then you have very precise vocabulary for the being that is not connected to matter, only temporarily connected to matter. So this is the word Atma. If you'd like to think of that, the word atomic came from the Sanskrit Atma through the Greek and Latin atome. Atome means you can't cut it. It turns out we did cut the atom, but you can't cut the Atma. So it meant originally the uncuttable being at the center of what you're calling self. That is the source of consciousness animating it. That cannot be cut, killed, moistened, destroyed. That will go up from body to body to body. And you've already had thousands and thousands and even millions of bodies before you became Markabadi.
So the Atma, the uncuttable, is it also the undivided, the unlimited?
And there are Sanskrit words for each of those. It's inconceivable, it's achintya.
Okay.
It's undividable, and so on and so forth.
So if it's undividable, is there any difference between my Atma and your Atma?
Of course.
But then it's divided.
You are yours and I am mine. And that individuality wasn't created by our coming into matter. It is what we brought into matter. That's the part where you go behind the projector and you see the actors. In other words, according to the Vedas, this world is a movie made in the image of the realm of Brahman, where there are individuals. The part that's achintya is to understand that those individuals are not in an illusory body. They're in a primary state of being that is not illusory.
Ooh, so I feel like we're getting somewhere close to where we had our last conversation a couple of years ago. But this notion of if the Atma is the undividable, but yet my Atma is different from your Atma, then doesn't that by definition mean there's two of them and thus they're separate?
Let's use the word distinct because English is tricky again.
Yeah.
Let's say that distinct from, not divided, not dualistic, but each one of us is a distinct individual. And if you doubt that right now, your whole value system would collapse.
Right.
So just be practical. If right now you decided that you are not a distinct individual, your entire premise for living and existing would collapse.
Absolutely.
Everything would collapse. You wouldn't even have the legs to move forward with an alternative plan.
Yeah.
Because your distinctive individuality has been negated. As soon as you do that, there is nothing further to do. So ask yourself if that is a practical plan for anything.
Yeah. Well, I think this is something that I hear people describe, and it's certainly something that I've experienced in meditation, where I go to the edge of me, and the only thing that's stopping me is my fear of not existing anymore, fear of not having any of those identities.
Just imagine that you wouldn't have that fear if you had a guru, and you did practices that gave you a direct perception of yourself. See, this is the difference between thinking and practice.
Right.
So if you have direct realization of yourself as immortal, once you actually have that, then everything changes, because you don't waver, you don't doubt it, you don't come back and say, maybe I am this body, maybe I could be. Oh, no, I don't think so. You wouldn't go into that state. You would just be completely clear of who you are, on who you are. See? So that is the state of Brahman realization. I am from Brahman. I'm not from here. That's why we keep getting rudely moved around here. We're on a visitor's visa, and we're not from here.
No permanent residence.
You want to cease to exist. Is that, after all this kerfluffle, does ceasing to exist sound like a reasonable alternative? And if it does, I can only say you must have had a really bad day.
Right.
If at the end of today you go, I just want to cease to exist.
Do you
that
know?
Was a rough day.
No, but there's a weird irony to it, because in meditation it is kind of my starting point. The ceasing to be Markabadi. Dissolving, literally. I imagined and surrender to not having a point of perception, not having a locality of
within
the eye.
matter, you mean?
Yeah, within anything I know.
That's not what I'm talking about. Your point of perception in yoga is not within matter. That is the point. That's where you start not having a point of perception within matter. You start changing the direction of your point of perception, and therefore, if you don't have the word Brahman, you don't know where to point.
Right. My first teacher said changing the center of gravity away from the matter, away from the lock, into the being.
Well, here's something that's important to understand. There are many brilliant teachers who are not giving the entire picture of Vedic knowledge, but they're giving an important piece of various forms of knowledge. So each one of them is valuable in as much as they know what they know. And this is why the Vedic culture is unique, because we look at everyone who's in pursuit of ultimate understanding with great respect. And we speak of them that way and treat them that way. But we don't say that they know everything until they answer all the right questions. So questions and answers is how you proceed through the knowledge. And that's why language, again, is so important. If I don't give you new words in my answers, you're stuck with the material words that you've had. But those words don't reflect a reality beyond matter. Therefore, Sanskrit is the programming language of yogis. And if you leave that out, you are not a yogi. You may be all kinds of interesting things, but you are not a yogi.
Amazing. Wow. Jeffrey Armstrong, thank you so much. What a pleasure, and what a deep wisdom combined with actual states of realization you present. Tell us, how can people get involved with what you're doing and see more of you?
Well, we teach regularly online. We have classes once a month for our regular students. People can see me both as a teacher, the way we were just doing. I'm also a Vedic astrologer, and I help people to understand the vehicle that they're driving in and how to drive it better and more usefully. And so jeffreyarmstrong.com, and I have a number of YouTubes online under similar names. My Sanskrit name is Kavindra Rishi.
Kavindra Rishi.
So you'll see me as either Kavindra Rishi or Jeffrey Armstrong. Because the idea is when you learn the Vedic knowledge, you add to your birth self another name given to you by a guru or teacher usually, which is your identity as a seeker of Brahman rather than just born to such and such a family.
Right.
We all need to be born to such and such a family, bless their hearts. But that's the beginning, not the goal.
Right.
Ask most people, would you like to become exactly like your parents? They'll say, with all due respect, no.
Yeah.
And so clearly this is a starting point. So that's your birth name. And then the place where you're heading toward eventually defines the majority of your action. So my dedication for the last 50 years, and especially the last 23, has full-time been teaching this Vedic knowledge. It's very nice of you to have me online with you, Mark.
Such an honor, such a
ask very intelligent questions. Thank you.
Such a privilege. Thanks, Jeffrey. And I know we tried to get on a few times, but we had some tech issues, but finally we got there. It's been such a pleasure. Thank you for all the work you do, sharing the light and intelligently sharing the light and re-sharing the wisdom of India without the colonization aspect from that Absolutely. Humble.
And you and I met in the context of your work with the First Nations and the Bhakti Fest. So this is a common thread for all people in the yogic culture. And that is, we see all living entities the same way, meaning we see their divinity, we see their potential greatness. We want to extract it. We don't look at them prejudicially. So we look at all the indigenous cultures as carriers for great wisdom. And even if there's a limit to how much, that doesn't mean we should not honor them, respect them, learn what they were teaching. So this is where you and I began our friendship, is in the context of that with Chase Iron Eyes and with other various important thinkers of our time. And at Bhakti Fest, the assembling of those thinkers helps us all to get access to this knowledge. So it's a joy to know you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Jeffrey. Let's bring in our next guest, Zat Baraka. I'd love you to say hello and see what we've got going on here. Zat, can you hear me? Earth calling Zat, come in. This is like Mork and Mindy. Earth calling Mork, come in.
I can hear you, my friend.
Come in, Mork.
I can hear you.
Zat, how are you?
I'm great.
You've met Jeffrey Armstrong before?
It's been a long time. How are you?
It has been a while. Good to see you again.
Yes. All right.
So good. Thank you, Jeffrey. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Mark.
Such a pleasure. And we'll carry on with Zat now.
Yes, pranams to both of you and keep up the good work.
Thank you so much. I will remove you. Thanks, Jeffrey. Lots of love. Oh, wow. And then my smooth transition again. Oh, we're through.
All right.
Oh, no. We're almost through on a smooth transition. But, of course, I've got you named as Jeffrey Armstrong, which is not your name. There is your name. And there it is. Zat Baraka. How are you?
Yes, brother.
How are you?
I'm good, man. I'm, are we on live right now?
We are so live. It was a smooth transition. Let me introduce you, Zat. Zat Baraka is a phenomenal space holder of the sacred masculine, enabling the transition from what had become a patriarchal dominated addiction of men and masculinity into a more holistic, sacred, incorporated way of being. Do you like my sum up?
I like it.
Was it
it's
good?
Nice. It's very nice.
And you want to say anything else about?
No, it's great. That was awesome.
And I first met Zat at Bhakti Fest. Actually, I first met you. I think I came to your 50th birthday party. I'm not saying how old you are. Shit. Do you remember that? Because
50. Wow.
I think it was yours. It was totally yours. I had just started working for Bhakti, and Shri brought me and my girlfriend then and just dropped us off at this random party, which is your birthday party.
Wow.
Right? And then left. And then Dave Stringer cornered me for about 2 hours telling me about his grievances with Bhakti Fest.
I think you just came for the free chai. You came for the free chai and chapatis.
The chai. I tell you what, that was really a beautiful time for me because I didn't know anyone. I didn't know you. Sort of crashed your birthday party, and I met such wonderful, wonderful beings then, and it really spoke wonders about you to have these just light beings around you. for such a sacred event, and somehow I had crashed, as I said. But
I mean, I'm just so lucky. Yeah, so lucky to have amazing people around. Yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot of people around, everywhere.
Yeah.
But LA, Southern California, there's some pretty amazing people that are, as you know, doing amazing things in the world, creating waves and helping to save this planet. So, yeah.
And that's where you are at the moment, in LA?
No, I'm in Ojai, California.
Oh, nice. Michael Brian Baker's there, isn't he?
Michael is here.
Yeah. He was just on the show last week.
Yeah.
Yeah, great.
Well, extra quiet Ojai right now. Beautiful. It's still green for the time being until the brown sets in, which isn't too far away.
Right.
There's still water in the streams, slowly going down. But yeah, to be in quarantine here is pretty. Well, we speak about it every day. How grateful we are to be able to, go into nature, as opposed to I grew up in Los Angeles, so knowing LA, knowing like being trapped in those inner city areas where it's just hot and it's intense. So having nature is pretty amazing. Yeah, grateful.
So tell me what's alive for you at the moment. What are you realizing? I mean, your specialty is to hold space for men and for their evolution. What are you noticing inside your clients and the groups that you're holding about this forced change?
It feels like everything's different, but it's also just the same. Meaning, like, it's the same. We all face the same issues as always, and men face the same issues as always, right? With being more emotionally mature, being more emotionally available, having greater capacity to be with our own emotion, with our partner's emotions, and understanding what masculinity is, re-understanding it, reinterpreting what it means to be a man. All of those things that I think, the regular things that men always face, all human beings face, is their own, is their own karmic habitual tendencies and their old ways of being. Men have their own certain flavor. Of course, every human being has their own. But what's amazing is when men start to learn about the ways that the male brain works, the way that the male body works, and our programs, it helps to give men a greater context for how to be in the world, right? So understanding that, and then also addressing kind of the current dilemma, which is men having to evolve. And we know that's been an ongoing thing, but especially through the Me Too movement into where we are now, and men learning to relearn how to be in the world. How do you give someone a compliment at work? What's the right way to relate to a woman at work when she's wearing nice shoes? Do you say something? Do you not? Like, I'm talking silly, but this is what men are thinking about. How do I relate to women in general? How do I date? What's being aggressive? What's not being aggressive? Do they want me to have that masculine power and be, really directive and take the bold first move of making the first kiss? Or is that considered so these kinds of questions are relevant and important. And so that's why I said it's all new, meaning like all the stuff that we're going through, like our modern cultural changes, that's all new.
Yeah.
But then it's also just all the old stuff, like all the habits and fears. Some guys have nice guy habits. Some guys have aggressor anger habits. Some guys have, wounding from their fathers. How do they work with that? How do they shift and change? And what's new contexts to look at themselves and the world, so that they can begin to shift how they're responding in their relationality. So what's really present for me right now is just me personally is empathy. So I'm in that place of introspection around empathy. I'm also training with my teacher right now, specifically around empathy. Pema Khandro Rinpoche is my teacher. And how can that fit into men's work, the whole idea of empathy from a men's work perspective? So we could say there's personal growth work. Everyone can do it, right? Just evolving ourselves, personal growth, spiritual growth, probably interchangeable. And then what is the specific way that men work in men's work that's different than just personal or spiritual growth work? It's through the lens of men's work. So how to relate to empathy through the lens of men's work that's what's present for me right now.
Right. And because people talk about masculinity and femininity almost in exchange of like yin and yang, and I know in certain situations I've been talking to couples and trying to help coach them, and I've used the terms masculinity and femininity instead of the term yin and yang. What is it the case that just everyone has this masculinity and femininity, or do men have the sort of the only access to masculinity? Like, what's the ratio? And do we all have 50-50 to start, and then we kind of society pushes it out, or how's it work?
Yeah, so
exclusive, that was the word. Do men have the exclusive?
When we talk about I personally don't use the term yin and yang in place of masculine and feminine, because masculine and feminine have very specific connotations. But what we do use interchangeably is man and woman, masculine and feminine. So sometimes a guy will say, yeah, I just really wasn't in my masculine, or sometimes a guy will say, yeah, I just really wasn't in my manliness. So that's equated, right? Being a man is equated with being masculine, being a woman is equated with being feminine, where we know that's not true, because your gender identity is not the same as having masculine or feminine qualities. So when we look at the terms masculine and feminine, it's really just pointing towards qualities or ways of, qualitative ways of being. And there's kind of an agreed upon idea of what masculine traits are, or qualities, or characteristics, and what are feminine traits, qualities, and characteristics. Being a man doesn't mean you have to have these masculine traits, right? Because if you go to some cultures, they're not going to have the same qualities or traits that's considered, powerful or acceptable or wonderful in one culture as they are in another. But in most Western cultures, European, North American cultures, there's kind of an agreed upon idea of what masculine qualities are and what feminine qualities are. Men can have a bunch of either, women can have a bunch of both, right? So the thing I say over and over and over is there's no box and there's no prescription for how you have to be.
Right.
The way I word it is, these traits and qualities are merely meditations on a context for how one wants to be in the world. It's a meditation on a context for how to respond to life, not as a have to, not as a prescription, right? Because when we have a prescription of, well, I'm not being masculine enough, that's not good, she's not going to like me, she's not going to love me, I got to be more masculine, I got to, then we get into suffering because we're not fulfilling the prescription. But they are really wonderful contexts to hold, Mark, because especially when you learn about them and you re-understand them and you reevaluate them, they can be really powerful. Let's say for a guy that his whole life he's been really super nice guy, super people pleaser guy, right?
Yeah.
And he's not had strong expression, he's not spoke up for his desires, he's not been the decision maker, or he's not decision maker, he's not been the directional energy in his relationship. He's always like, okay, hon, sure, I'll do that, whatever you want. Or he's a pleaser. And let's say in his situation, his wife, his partner, it could be gay, straight or bi, is triggered all the time, because like, why can't you decide on something? But he has all these programs and wounds around being expressive, right? So now here he has this idea of a masculine quality. One of the masculine qualities is being directional. And so it's like, okay, this is a meditation on the context that I can play with today. I can play with the context today of, I'm going to be more directional. I'm going to play with directionality when I see my brother, when I see my partner, when I go to work on Zoom. And so these again are contexts that you can play with to shift out of your habitual ways of being. And there's really deep and really more provocative downloads on all these things. They're not just so simple. But when you get into it, into the nitty gritty of it, it's really, really helpful. Guys really love it tremendously. It changes their lives. And so if you want to just dig a little tiny bit deeper into the masculine and feminine, we could say that masculine qualities and traits are the capacity for directionality, presence. We've heard about men being more present. Presence is a very important one to have as a quality of the masculine. And if we zoom out to kind of the Eastern spiritual teachings, what do we see in the yogic tradition? The masculine, or we'll say consciousness, right? Form and formlessness. Formlessness is consciousness, or Shiva, the masculine container, right? You with me?
You would say the container Shiva is masculine?
Shiva as the embodiment of the masculine, right? Shiva is consciousness. So we could say that consciousness, or presence, all-pervading presence, is a quality of the masculine, a quality. And then the feminine, or Shakti, is all the energy of life. It's emotionality, it's giving birth, it's nurturing, it's food, it's the chaotic power of nature. And so you have consciousness, and then you have energy or radiance, right? Or you have spaciousness, and then you have all the energy that fills that.
And how do these two interact together? Because in my conception, the feminine is the womb within which the arrow, the masculine, exists within the circle.
Well, yeah, if you look at the symbology, I mean, even in Tibetan Buddhism, you have the bell and you have the vajra and you have the womb. But if we're going into the yogic realms, what do you see in Shiva's hair? Spouting out of his hair is the Ganga, right? Water is pouring out of his locks, because in that creation myth, Gangama, or Shakti, the feminine, was just wild water destroying the earth. Because of the sheer power of the feminine Shakti, of the water, the water or the womb, the great ocean where life comes from, was wild, destroying the earth. So Shiva contained it in consciousness.
Gave it direction. The simple way
we look at it is the feminine is the water. The feminine traits are the water in the river, and the banks of the river is the masculine.
That makes
so the container
sense,
and the energy.
Yeah.
So that may be a nice way to look at it. And if we go to the science aspect of it, about how the male brain is actually different than the female brain, not my opinion, books, scientific research that shows how the male brain develops differently in the different processing centers in the brain, and how the male brain processes different than the feminine brain. The feminine brain is created to be relational, emotional, and then the masculine brain is actually created to be logic-based and goal-oriented, right? So those are all kind of, if we look at the agreed-upon traits, and then if we look at the biology, those things all fit together quite beautifully.
So, and I like John Gray's work on the brain chemistry as well.
Yeah.
Men are from Mars, women from Venus. I saw him talk a long time ago. It was very good. I just wrote his name down, actually. So with regards to balance, this notion seems to be in yoga and in yogic traditions that balance is key. Now, what does balance look like in the average man? Is it, because I often think I obviously have feminine qualities to me. as well as
sure.
masculine qualities, and there's a certain ebb and flow as the day goes on, and in response to the environment. You know, if I'm met with a very strong masculine force trying to hurt me, then I'm sure that will raise out of me a greater proportion of masculinity in order to, you know, meet it. So I suppose the question is, what is the average balance in a man? What's an average masculinity, femininity balance?
So first, what I would say, Mark, is it's not really. I would say first, it's not important.
Right.
I just want to state that out loud because.
But balance is important, right? Balance is important.
Balance is important. I'm saying knowing how masculine you should be or how feminine you should be is not really important.
Right.
And the idea of using these idea of masculine and feminine can be effective and helpful. But until a man really understands it, it can be more damaging because they're usually going off of their conditioning of what being a man means. You have to be this kind of masculine.
As are women, right? Women are also going off.
Women are the same. Absolutely. Women are the same thing, and how they should be feminine, and also women are programmed in how their men are supposed to be masculine, and men are programmed in how their women are supposed to be feminine.
Right.
So the idea is really to obliterate all that and look at what is my shit? Like, what are my wounds, my issues, my traumas, my tendencies, my habits? Where do I need some room for improvement, for shifting? What could I play with? You know, as I use the example of the classic people pleaser nice guy, what could he play with as a different context for being in the world? Mm-hmm. So a nice guy can go into work and someone says, I need you to do this for me. Then someone says, you need to do this for me. He's like, okay, I'll do it. It's not that the guy needs to sit there and go, okay, I need to be more masculine now. But if he's really studying himself and understanding himself and his habitual tendencies, he can use that context of, let's say, directionality, or let's say kind of the fierceness of the masculine. Feminine can be fierce as well, but that directional fierceness or the warriorship as a context to be in his body and to change how he's responding to life. In terms of kind of the percent, does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
he's looking at where his habitual tendencies are more common, and he's going I'm more prone to just say yes. So in order to create a greater balance out of the habitual addiction of my own programming, I'm going to look to where I'm most and go a bit more of where I'm least.
Yeah, it's literally you just practicing or playing with some different energetics to shift you out of the places that make you feel really crappy, which may be your everyday saying yes to everyone and getting steamrolled and stepped on by everyone. And the guy who does that, it doesn't feel good. So this is just one way there's many approaches that we have to work on in personal growth. This is not the only approach. But if we're having the conversation about masculine and feminine, this is one way, and we could call this, a type of embodiment practice where you get in our body and we play with different ways of responding to life inside of being aware of our body and responding to life.
And are we always? I'm sorry to interrupt you. Are we always looking?
I was just gonna.
Yeah, go on.
I wanted to just go to the percentage thing.
Yes.
Because you asked about that, so. I would say about 90% to 95% of the men that come to work over all the years that I've been working with are men that want to work on re-understanding, reintegrating, and growing themselves in the area of masculinity. I've not had a man come and say, I want to be more feminine. I've just not had I've had men come and say, I want to be more compassionate, I'm pretty hard ass, I have steel walls up, I'm not a very empathetic person. I've had men say that, but pretty much all the men that come to the work are identified as being, they're more identified with being masculine. That's not to say that they're not sensitive, because I get plenty of sensitive, sweet, new agey spiritual guys that are very sensitive, very feeling, very empathetic, and they don't necessarily want to be tough macho guys, but they want to understand, well, what is masculinity? How can I play with that more? How could I enhance that more in myself? Because I don't really have very much masculine qualities, and I'd like to look into that. So every man that comes to the work is more interested in understanding and healing and reinterpreting and practicing with masculine traits, which is not to say that they're negating feminine traits.
Right.
Because as you become a more healed, holistic man, the natural outcropping of that is what? To be more compassionate, empathetic, caring, sensitive, to have more skillfulness and relationality, to be with your own emotion.
Are those all feminine qualities?
So we could say that feminine traits are...
like, is empathy a feminine trait?
I would say that relationality, interconnectedness is a more feminine way of being. The capacity for pleasure or the capacity for feeling. Even if you read the book, The Female Brain, I think her name is Luzanne Briand, she talks, and she's a neuroscientist or a research scientist, talks about how the female brain is programmed to feel more. I think it's the emotional part of the brain. What is that? The amygdala.
The amygdala, yeah.
You have more capacity. The female brain has more capacity for accessing emotion than the male brain does. That's not to say that all women are more feeling, because a woman could be raised by a single father who's very logic based, and she could be programmed in that way. But as far as feminine traits go, we could say kind of the agreed upon feminine qualities, traits or characteristics would be the capacity to feel.
So that's empathy, right?
Huh?
Empathy? Because that's...
Yeah.
So in your initial thing, you said you're working on empathy.
Yes.
So are you working on your feminine side in order to balance your masculine side?
I don't think about it quite. Honestly, I really just don't think about it like that. I may think about, again, I just use these traits as a context to look at myself in different situations. I don't walk around saying, oh, I'm not being masculine enough. I may say, oh, I'm being hyper-directional today. I'm being too pushy. I'm being hyper-directional, which may border on, anger, or may border into that energy. Is that masculine? Not necessarily. It may be just anger.
Yeah. I mean, because
anger is not a masculine trait. Anger is an emotion.
Right. And one of my, I wanted to ask a question in a minute, but what sometimes I find myself, if I'm doing something and I'm responding in a certain way, I can be responding in too much of a masculine way, and I say, oh, I need to be a bit more feminine now. I need to sit back and breathe and stop the direction, stop the location of my response, and kind of sit and take it all in. And so I also don't find myself saying I need to be more masculine, but I do find myself saying to myself, I need to be more feminine now. I need to sit within the observer space.
Yeah. Well, the observer space is actually consciousness, which is a masculine, because when you think about the average woman, and I use this example all the time, when a woman gets stressed, let's say a man and a woman, we'll use a heterosexual situation, a man and a woman get into an argument. The woman gets triggered by him. What does most women want to do? Do most women want to go in the garage and work on their motorcycle and not be bothered and be left alone?
No, they want to talk about it.
They want to talk about. They'll call their girlfriends. They want to talk about it with you.
Yeah.
They want to be relational. They want, they may have more emotionality.
Yeah.
Most men are not going to go and call their buddies. They're not going to be in the family and talking. We need to work this out most men, right?
Yeah.
Most men like space. They want to be alone. This whole idea of the masculine imperative of freedom. Leave me alone. Let me be alone. Let me zone out on sports.
Look at a big newspaper or something. Yeah.
So again, we're talking generalities, but these generalities are true. I mean, if I could sit and be alone and do nothing and just sit in consciousness for long periods of time, I'd be very happy. That would be awesome for me, to just sit and be alone and do nothing.
Yeah. This is, I first heard John Gray talk about this with regards to the evolution of life and where we spent most of our time as humans. What were men doing? They were out hunting and, waiting for the tiger and being small and then if they were stressed in the jungle, it would be because something there was dangerous. And so the best way for them to relieve the stress would be to stay small and quiet and not talk about it and just be by themselves, just hide.
Yeah, there's that lens. David Data, he's one of my teachers. I'm obviously influenced by his work, but these teachings are also throughout the Tantras, Kashmir Shaivism. The whole creation myth of in Kashmir Shaivism of Shiva and Shakti and the play of the feminine and the masculine and how the world was created. All these teachings come through that lens, anyways. But I don't know if we kind of got lost in that conversation. But what's most important for me around all of this is how can it be applicable in everyday life for a man? That's the most important thing. I don't care about the theory so much. And so an example might be modern women are, as we know, they're graduating more from medical institutions. They're getting more executive jobs. Women are independent. They're earning their money. They don't need men to do anything for them. This is the world the way it should be. Women are independent. And so along with that, women are taking on more of the masculine qualities, being directional, being goal-oriented, being a little less relational, wanting to complete tasks and be successful, right? And so in a relationship, perhaps a woman who works on her computer all day, who's hyper-focused, achieving goals, and then her man comes into the space, hey, honey, do you want to have dinner? And she's hyper masculine, right? Her goal orientation, logic-based, moving towards something. Her response to him may be a more in that moment, a more masculine style way of communication. Let me finish this stuff. I'm going to get this done, and then I'll talk to you. And the guy's like, I just wish she would be more connected with me. I want her to be more, And so then how can that man respond to his partner, to his wife, or to his woman? And so this is where some of these teachings can come in. If he responds to her in a very feminine way,
right,
it may drive her further into her masculine. Yeah. Like he comes up and is like, come on, honey, let me just rub your back. Hey, leave me alone. I need to finish getting this thing done, right? Yeah. So, again, these things that we're talking about can be really helpful as a place to practice with. That's ultimately what it is. It's not a box. It's not a prescription. It's a place to practice with and try different things in your relationship, with yourself, if you're a single person, at work, with your coworkers, as a way to free yourself from your habitual tendencies.
And of course, in response to things which you feel, if it's too masculine or too feminine from either a man or a woman, it doesn't matter. But if it's too much of one, a response could be to trump them in that. So let's say they're being too masculine. Yeah. You could trump them and be more masculine.
Oh, it's very common.
Right.
I see that a lot.
Yeah, or you could go the other way, right?
Go ahead.
No, I wanted to just finish that. Or you could go the other way. And so it's this tactical...
It's called inversion.
Right.
Yeah, I have guys that say, I've been trying to out-masculinize my woman. I'm like, okay. I mean, that's not really the approach. That actually just sounds like manipulation, or, it sounds like trying to get your needs met, or trying to, get someone to act a certain way. The goal is there's no goal of out-masculinizing, but there is a very common dynamic in so many modern relationships where men have become more of the feminine essence person in the relationship, and the woman has taken on more of the kind of the masculine qualities. Not that she's being manly, but that she's taken on more of the masculine qualities, because that's part of now also our societal program for women, right? Is around, you can do what you want, you can achieve, you can do anything that you want. And so men are kind of lost in this limbo place of what do I do? How do I act? Should I not act too masculine for her? Is that going to bug her? Or if I'm too feminine, then like if I'm being too like emotional and sensitive, then she gets turned off by me. So there's a lot of questions in here for men.
And do you think there's too much thinking about it and less kind of dancing with it? I mean, do you encourage people to like go into the intellect and try and analyze what's going on?
Well, I think it's important because that's why so many guys come to the work. They want to understand, you know, why their relationship isn't working. Why does my woman get pissed off at me all the time? I don't know what I'm doing wrong. I don't know what I'm saying wrong. I'm kind. I'm sensitive to her needs, but she's still like unhappy about this, and I don't know what to do. And then I get mad at her. And so they come for real reasons, relational reasons. And so it is important to understand these ideas, but it's also equally important to learn how to practice, to use these different approaches. Like sometimes you have to heal a wound around how you were raised to be a man based on how your father modeled it for you. So if your father modeled relating to anger by hiding in the bedroom when he gets angry so that no one sees it because anger is not acceptable in your house, that's how you're programmed. And so your relationship to masculinity is based on the modeling of your father. And your father modeled, well, the way you're a man and the way you man up is you don't dare ever lash out at anyone. Anger is not acceptable. And so that becomes then your mode of relating to the world in your version of masculinity.
You know, I feel I had an interesting upbringing in the sense that my parents were divorced in the traditional Jewish way when I was 4 or whatever, and and my mum is one of those Margaret Thatcher characters, these 80s power women, criminal lawyer, had 5 kids, did everything, cooked, cleaned, blah blah blah, better man than the men, and my dad is a little soft, fat Zen Buddha sweetie, and because my parents were separated, I felt I got my feminine side from my dad and my masculine side from my mum, which in it I felt gave me some sort of weird balance routine because I could see that from both sides. As such, I feel that a lot of my masculine role models have come from my mother. Is that possible? Because I have a lot of traits similar to my mum.
Yeah, we're a mirror of our parents, and our relationships are a mirror of our parental relationship. So yeah, your dad modeled not necessarily masculinity, but your dad modeled for you, this is how you should be a man. He didn't maybe consciously say that, but you watched him and he modeled that. And then your mom modeled, this is the kind of woman that you should be with, because that's what we're always seeking, right? If we look at the imago theory of Harl Hendricks, this is what we're always seeking, is to resolve our parental relationships. So your mom modeled the kind of woman that you're going to eventually want to be with, or the inversion of her. That can happen too.
Yeah, to counterbalance. I mean, what I find is that when those properties of my mother come up in women, I meet them with my mother. So like I do the counterbalance. Like, you want to see power? This is power. And I get that from my mum. That force, that thing.
Yeah.
Whereas I would really like to just be like my dad, is a big softie. But he gets controlled by the strong feminine, all because of past things. But
there's a lot in there too, and also you may have saw your dad as a pushover, and so you wanted to rebel against that, and you said at some point, I don't ever want to be like that. Not ever, but you said, I don't want to be like that. I don't want to be pushed around, or I don't want to be, controlled. And so, you took on more of your mom's traits. That's absolutely. But generally, our same-sex parent is where we get a majority of that influence. That's not to say that our opposite sex parent doesn't influence how we are in the world. obviously it's huge, right?
Right.
So men marry their mother if we're talking heterosexual, or even if you're homosexual. Men marry their mother and women marry their father, and that's the idea of imago, or the image. We're drawn towards that. We're drawn towards those traits, subconsciously drawn towards those traits because that's what we're used to.
It's very Freudian,
karma?
isn't it?
Karma is being drawn towards what we're used to repeatedly over and over.
And what about the notion that we become like our parent?
100%.
So then, if we're drawn towards our opposite, then by default, are we setting ourselves up to fall into the category of our same-sex parent?
Yeah, I'm not an expert in this particularly. This is really work. Harville Hendricks is really great in this work.
Who's
Fantastic.
that? Who's that?
Harville Hendricks, who wrote "Getting the Love You Want," Imago Therapy. He's the founder of that. And his wife, I think it's Helen Hunt Hendricks. But yes, that is what we're doing. Why do you think couples always have dovetailing issues? Couples have those perfect issues. One person is highly aloof, unemotional. The other person is highly grasping and needy. The more needy they are, the more aloof. The more aloof they are, the more needy. Perfect fit for having a karmic relationship, right? It can be the man or the woman. One person has severe abandonment issues. The other person has severe feeling trapped issues or freedom issues. They trigger each other all the time. Hey, you didn't look at me when I came home. What's going on? Nothing. I just got home too. What do you mean? I didn't do anything, And then little triggers and the little arguments happen out of nothing, out of our needs not being met. And so that is such a perfect mirror of our parental relationship. And for some people, they don't see it because it's actually inverted. So if you have a really loud, angry father, you may hate that. And so you actually may become super quiet and reserved. But most of the time, I see it's not the inversion. Most of the time, we take on those traits. Yeah.
Yeah, amazing. So, and so if is it really our joy that we should be like aiming towards? Like, what makes us feel joy?
I think that's a personal thing. I mean, I just have my own personal mission and my own purpose and what I'm working toward. I mean, ultimately, my own personal work is about being a more loving, passionate being. How can I bring more love into the world? How can I grow myself so I can offer myself in a loving way and be an awakened, loving being? I mean, that's kind of the simplest way to put it. And if we look at the foundation of what most people who are in personal spiritual growth, what do we all want? It's the same thing. We just all have our own different flavors of that. The beauty of men's work is that there's all these beautiful different ways and kind of I'll just keep calling them meditations on ways of being that can really help a man to feel powerful, to feel free, to feel full, to feel like he's living a purposeful life and he's giving a part of himself in the world and not playing small. And all those things lead to us not being very happy. I mean, I'm the happiest I've ever been in my life. I'm the most fulfilled. And I mean, if you want to say the most balanced than I've ever been, I mean, I would hope so.
Right.
But absolutely right now, more than ever before. What about you?
Yeah, I feel great in these days. My practices of meditation, so sitting in the meditation in the neutrality, really helps me come back to witnessing the ebbs and flows that my masculinity and femininity goes through on an interactive basis. I think the real key is to become aware of your own discomfort when the environment comes. You know, the environment comes and it presents something. The sooner you can go, oh, that makes me feel shit, or that feels uncomfortable, then the sooner you have a grasp of what is going on in the interaction, and may be able to not manipulate, but change it, rotate it.
Well, that's the power in men's work, is that it really, you know, one of the ways we kind of view it is, one aspect of men's work is a little bit like you're coming into the dojo, you know, like you're coming into the Kung Fu dojo where you're going to practice. And when you practice with other men, there's no women in the space, and you are getting reflection and feedback. You're going deep into self-inquiry, into yourself, going deep through different processes and practices, getting feedback and practicing over and over again in these different modalities that we teach through Men's Wisdom Work, which is my organization. It's a very radical experience for guys. It's very, very different than just going in, and I'm a meditator. I mean, I'm almost 21-year Buddhist practitioner. But going into the dojo of men's work is a very unique and extremely powerful, provocative, and unique experience.
And what specifically is different than being in an equally open group of mixed men and women exploring consciousness?
Well, for one, there's no women. And there's a different biology for man when he's in a space with only men. There's a different biological trigger that happens when he's in tribe with other men. You would think that men might be more protective around other men because you can't be vulnerable because it's a man and he can attack you. But actually, the idea is that if the quality, the essential quality of the masculine is consciousness, or spaciousness, or presence, if that's the kind of primary quality of the masculine, not aloofness. Is Shiva aloof? No, Shiva's all-pervading consciousness. It's everything. It's right. Yeah. And so when consciousness meets consciousness, it deepens. They deepen together. So when men come into a space, they actually deepen together. If a woman walks in, there's a biological response. Even if you're not a supercharged sexual being and you don't have that hunting mentality like a lot of men have, there's still a biological response. Oh, there's a feminine creature in the room. Your biology changes. You go into one of these other modes, whether it's protector mode, or whether it's sexual mode, like, oh, I'm turned on by that, even though you may not be leering or looking at her saying that. You still have a response in your body. It's a feminine creature. It's a female creature. It's a different response than a male creature. Right. So just being in a space with men only helps men to deepen into their own masculine consciousness, and also because of the nature of the space, because it's a very safely held space. Look, men's groups are not just guys together, hugging and crying, talking about our feelings. Sure, that's some of it, but the context that I work with is both equally empathetic and compassion, and it's also equally kind of iron against iron sharpens the sword. You have to practice, and you work with other men, and you get feedback. You do your deep inner work. You become transparent and vulnerable. You face your inner demons with other brothers loving you. And that goes on and that goes on. You keep practicing with all these different practices and tools and modalities. It's a very, very powerful and unique cauldron for transformation to happen. I mean, guys walk out all the time saying, this is the most powerful experience I've ever had in my life. Not only in my men's work, but in lots of different men's work, because of the power of being with other men. If you're in a well-facilitated space, I've had guys that have come in completely broken, suicidal, not completely confused, at the end of their wits, and they come into like a 3-day men's immersion or a 4-day men's immersion, and they come out like Wow, that feels like years ago. Like they've rediscovered a whole different aspect of themselves. Yes, they had peak moments throughout these 3 or 4 days.
Mm-hmm.
There's many peak moments like on any retreat, but the depth of the work and the power of having other brothers, tribe around you,
Right.
is extremely transformative.
Yeah, wonderfully explained. Thank you. And thank you for all the work that you do on that front. I mean, holding that space for empowerment of people is, I mean, there's no greater service, I believe.
It's not easy.
Do you think that equally women's groups, where it's just women, it has got an equal amount of importance and power?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I can't speak for women, but I mean, I can speak for the women that I know that say that their women's work is, of course, co-ed work is extremely powerful. Absolutely. Without a doubt, when you're doing co-ed relationality work, extremely powerful. Better, which one's better? I can't say, but I know that for men, before they can go into a co-ed space and be able to practice with women, they need to have foundation.
Right.
It's kind of like before you go into the Kung Fu sparring competition, you better just practice in your dojo first to prepare yourself to be with all these feminine or these women, these relational beings.
Right.
But yeah, women being in solidarity with other women without having a man in there that can trigger biological protection mechanisms in them, do the deep work to prepare themselves also to show up for their beloved. Absolutely, yeah.
How does this very difficult scenario happen now that we're going through with the emergence of the trans population, of the gay, the queer, all the cross-genderal beings? How does that relate? I mean, it's a very touchy and difficult subject, as simply put, with like, what toilets do these trans beings go into? But how does it relate? If you had a previous a trans man, want to come to your group?
Yeah, absolutely. I have a trans man right now that I'm talking to. I've had plenty of trans men at workshops at different places that I've taught. I mean, that's kind of the only prerequisite for coming to a men's group, is that you have to be identified as a man.
Right.
And
does that bypass the biological triggering?
Are you saying does that trigger other men who are born men with the biology penis and?
Well, so we were talking about the sacredness of having just men in a group enables the biological stimulus that happens when a woman comes in to not be present. But having a trans man,
I haven't seen it affect the space at all.
Right, it's fascinating that.
No, I have not seen it affect the space at all. It's actually deep in the space because there's an honoring of that person that has the courage to come in, because it could be an awkward situation. Absolutely. For being the only white person, or being the only black person, or being the only. I mean, I've never had two trans men in a workshop. I've had multiple on different occasions. I've had one, but being the only person in there who is trans could be uncomfortable, I might imagine. Yeah. But it's never shifted the space at all. Lots of gay men come in. I mean, I have my men's coach training that starts May 27th. That's the next program. It's a very powerful 6-month men's coach training program in men's deep inner work. And we've had many gay men in it, gay, bisexual, in the past. So this work is not for only one type of man. And this, again, since we're not teaching how to live in a box of masculinity or a box of a man,
right,
it is based on personal and spiritual growth. Yes, we do have concepts that we bring in, but the concepts are there as a way to practice, not as a way that you have to be. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that's a wonderful answer. And even to the point where the the trans man, it doesn't disrupt the men's group, but in fact finds out a way to deepen it. And it might be very interesting and important work for trans males or trans men to start to reincorporate their identity with other men.
Absolutely. I mean, that's what someone just said to me recently. I had a trans man about 4 or 5 days ago I was speaking with on various subjects, and they came to one of my workshops at a festival. I think it was Beloved Festival or something many years ago, and they had a peak experience in there. And well, imagine if your whole life you were a woman, but you felt you were a man, and then you got into your teens or your early 20s, and then you went through your transition. Well, no one's trained you in how to be a man.
Right.
You've been trained in how to be a woman.
Right.
So there'd be a big learning curve, right?
Yeah.
So there'd be a lot of learning that would happen.
Absolutely.
So it's a great place. It's a great place to come and do that with other loving, compassionate, open men. Yeah.
Great, wonderful. Zat, thanks for coming on, mate. It's been great and fascinating, and I love the work you're doing. Tell us about some of the stuff you're doing. You've got courses coming up, and have you got online programs?
Yeah, for any man that has an interest in leading men's work or in being a men's coach, which doesn't mean that you have to only coach men, but it's a very provocative, holistic training that uses many modalities from mindfulness traditions, Tibetan Buddhism, as well as spiritual psychology, depth psychology, Western depth psychology-based men's work, shadow work, the traditional Western men's work, as well as therapeutic approaches and coaching. So we're teaching men how to be coaches and or bring this into leadership. Even I have men who are insurance agents that want to learn how to be better leaders in their companies. And so it's a 6-month in-depth deep dive into the art of men's coaching. That starts May 27th. Applications are open right now on menswisdomwork.com, menswisdomwork.com. And again, that starts May 27th. And that's what we have going on right now. And then we also have a free men's group online right now that we're offering every Thursday at 12 Pacific time. That's also at menswisdomwork.com. A free online men's group. We have guys from all over the world show up.
Yeah.
And then we also have a donation-based men's practice group online on Zoom. It's just donation-based, where we're doing men's somatic embodiment practices, yoga, and meditation. That's only a 60-minute class on Wednesday mornings, 8:30 a.m. Pacific. So Wednesday mornings is practice, just get in our body, breath, yoga, meditation. Thursday afternoon is no movement, but it's literally just an online men's group,
right,
for about 120 minutes. And then the program we have offering right now is the 6-month men's coach training.
And okay, wonderful. And more information they can find on wisdomwork.com, Men's Wisdom Work.
Men's Wisdom Work. I also, I have a whole client base. I do one-on-one deep work for men. In whatever realm men want to work, but it usually has something to do with confidence, intimacy, relationality, and in living a purposeful life.
Wonderful.
So feel free to send me an email through the site, zat@menswisdomwork.com, zat@menswisdomwork.com.
Wonderful. And lastly, a question came in a bit late, but what are some of the things we can do to start to pay attention to, or what are some of the things we can pay attention to in ourselves to start to notice the unhelpful patterns of masculinity and femininity inside ourselves? Like quick kind of fire tips.
Honestly, it's really more based on you. It's more based on what are your habits and patterns that create disruption in your relationships, that create rupture, that create disconnection with your child or your parent or your friend or your family. It's not really kind of this general thing. It's more of like, what is your programming? What are your habits? And then we can bring in these different lenses around masculinity and begin to work with you. So if someone wants to send me a specific question around an issue that they're having, I'm happy to answer that. but I would say there's not really a blanket statement. Sure, there's all kinds of things: integrity, respect, honoring of life, being a more present man, like all kinds of things that can give tips and ideas. But it really is more of a very specific thing based on what your challenges are.
I like that. Good answer. Zat Baraka, thank you so much.
Bro.
It's been such a pleasure
Mark.
having you on.
Thank you
Feel
so
It
much
Friday.
for having me.
It's been great. Thank you.
You're awesome.
Thank you.
All right, brother.
brother.
Talk to you soon.
Okay. Bye.
Bye-bye. Peace.
Oh, wow. What a great show. Thank you to my guests, Jeffrey Armstrong and Zat Baraka. What a great Feel It Friday. And actually, the show is changing after this. I am changing the show to a morning show from 9 till 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time is going to be the new show. And we're actually not on next week. I'm taking a week break. It's been going for 6 weeks. Been talking to a lot of people, 2 hours a day. From the 11th, Monday 11th, we've got some great people. Cassandra Ferreira, Krishna, we've got Kurawaka on, Elizabeth Hubner again, Izzy, Nate Hogan, maybe Tapas Fleming, Joanna Beekman. Oh, there's so many good people. And that is just the first week of coming back, Monday the 11th. So please, like, share this video, share all the videos. I have a book, bookevolve.com. It's all about balance. That's the mission and the statements that we've been going through. What have we had from today? The sacred presence in self is important, and your own viewpoint, your own presence, your own atma, your own center of self is your compass, is your direction. Nobody else can tell you what you need or who you are. It's for us, ourselves, to sit courageously within the presence of the light and the sound of creation, and to allow it to guide us through our curiosity of it, through our curiosity and authenticity of presence, whatever that is for you. So thank you. Have a wonderful weekend. Have a wonderful week. I will see you in a week's time. Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to be space and to share with such luminaries as we have on the show. Thank you so much.